Rivers do not drink their own water. Trees do not eat their own fruit. The sun does not shine on itself, and flowers do not spread their fragrance for themselves. Living for others is a rule of nature. We are all born to help each other. No matter how difficult it is, life is good when you are happy, but much better when others are happy because of you.
Good morning, viewers. Thank you very much. Welcome to Punchline Africa Television, broadcasting from the Political Command Center in London. Good morning, viewers across the continents of the world. Thank you very much for watching us. This is Punchline Africa, the African voice. This show is meant for the people of Africa. This show is meant to bring sense, to cultivate sense. Which way Africa? What can Africa do? This morning, we have a very good topic, the debt crisis that is killing Africa. The debt crisis, the ceiling. Every African country is crying of the crisis. The debt has gone beyond its levels. Where did we go wrong? Where did the rain beat us? It started when? What can we do? Are we victims of the debt crisis syndrome? What structures are there that have been put in place such that we don't run away all the time about the debt? The Africa, the voice of Africa is today. Good morning in Nairobi, Kenya, is none other than Miriam Ogutu. Good morning, Miriam Ogutu.
A very good morning to you and good morning to our viewers.
Thank you very much for joining us. If you have any news, like you have already done your news, and I'm sure you don't need to, let's go straight to the topic, the background to the debt crisis of Africa. And then you surely, I believe you have some notes, then I can pick up from there. I have also written something this morning about the cancellation. Do we abolish it? Do we cancel? Why should the West cancel? And then before you get anything new, they want you to do what they did in the past. Remember, Miriam, the debt is interwoven. It's a private equity. It's a private entity given. There are some people who lend us money through these institutions, but their money is theirs. The IMF, there is somebody who owns IMF. Have you ever asked that countries don't contribute for IMF to have the money to lend you? Did you know that? So anybody coming around here telling people that we want debt cancellation, and I'm particularly very disturbed about my African leaders who want to beg about the cancellation. Don't beg cancellation. Abolish. The rich North must abolish these debts because they also used our resources. Our forefathers gave them resources which they took to the metros of Europe, and built all the trains, the railway station, the underground. This is our property. This is part of a shared concern where they took from us. This is the time for them to help us, other than keeping us enslaved in total slavery. On the question of economic slavery up to today, you borrow, the loan comes, it adds on top, then you say you go for another loan. This is what we want to discuss today. Thank you very much, Miriam. Give us a bit of background information. Thank you. Back to you in Nairobi. I'm Dr. David Chimasanga, son of Manzi, son of Soil, right from London. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much. And African governments are falling into the same debt patterns as spiraled out of control in the 1990s and into the new millennium, resulting in a fairly robust debt cancellation program during that time. In the 90s, this campaign culminated in the 2005 G7 finance ministers agreement that triggered $130 billion in debt being cancelled for 36 countries. The COVID-19 crisis and associated economic downturn obviously has had a huge impact to the finance of most governments around the world. The low-income countries were able to hold debt repayments during the pandemic as a result of the introduction of the G20's Debt Service Suspension Initiative, DSSI, in May of 2020, but this expired in December 2021 and never secured the hope or support for private creditors. Nevertheless, it provided $6 billion debt relief in 2020 and another $7 billion in 2021 for 48 countries that signed up for it, mostly in Africa. The IMF provided another $851 million in debt service relief for 29 of the world's poorest countries. Total African external public debt reached $726 billion in 2021, up from $27 billion on the previous year, a fairly modest 3.7% increase. However, it is clear that the situation varies a great deal from country to country, and in December 2022, the IMF said that 60% of low-income countries were then at high risk of debt distress, double the level at the end of 2015. And evidence of the ability of African states to cope with these current debt levels includes the fact that only 3 governments, that is in Chad, Ethiopia and Zambia, have sought debt restructuring under the G20's new common framework, which was introduced to replace the DSSI. It has a big advantage in that includes China among its members. Zambia was the first African state to default during the pandemic when it failed to pay $42.5 million Eurobond repayment in November 2022. And in East Africa and Southern Africa, for instance, the proportions of sovereign debt held in multilateral loans has fallen to 47% of the total, with bilateral loans steady at 35% and private finance now accounting for 19%, and Chinese institutions have become far bigger lenders to African governments since the 2005 agreement. So, and I think we shall be looking on the details of that. So let me just perhaps give us a rough figure on some of the what a few countries owe, especially to in Ghana and Zambia. IMF has given them $3 billion that is in Zambia, and in Ghana, 1.3 billion in bailout loans, respectively. And then Angola is the one that is leading as far as what it owes China in this continent, with 42 million US. Is it? Yeah, US dollars, followed by Ethiopia, Zambia. I think Kenya sits at number 5 on that chart, and of course the others in the IMF and World Bank. So that's just very short breakdown as far as the debt conundrum in Africa is concerned.
Thank you very much, Miriam. Many countries across Africa go to European countries saying forgiveness. For me, the voice of forgiveness only comes when I am going to the church. I ask God for forgiveness for the sins that I might have committed and against those who transgress against me. I ask God all the time. Miriam, you ask for forgiveness when there is something wrong you've done. But in these circumstances, why should African countries ask for forgiveness? Debt forgiveness. Forgive us. We should ask for debt abolition. Abolish the debts. Cancellation, and then, you know, Miriam, what they do? They say cancellation. Then when you go back now, they say, we want to see test case on how you use the other one. You know why most countries, Kenya, of late, your country might not have passed the test of receiving further IMF money. Because they have put conditions. How did you use the other one? If you have cancelled the date, then why do you ask me where I went a problem? Miriam, this morning, I had another student from America called me very early in the morning at about 5:32. And they said, can I have, there are two questions that were bothering me. And he told me, can you help me, sir, with these two questions? How can I say what I should say? And how do I say it so that I don't make things worse for myself? Then I said that question is only for psychological, those who did psychology and sociology at the university, but I will try, because I need psychology, a bit of it, to answer your question. The biggest problem that we have as Africa, we lack, we communicate silently. You see, when you tell people about Hitler, Miriam, oh, if you remind me I have come to your house, and I remind me, you see, I have come to your house without telling you, Miriam, that I'm going to borrow some 200,000 shillings from you. Then I started saying, you know, the other time we had agreed that the money comes on first, and then you took it, it came after 1 month, 2 months, 3 months. Miriam, if you remind me there, you are silently telling me, even at the end, I wouldn't like to sit there to wait. I would say thank you. If I have not told you I was coming to borrow more money, I will keep quiet and have your tea, then say, no, I just came to see a neighbor. So this is exactly what happens in the IMF. And the student was asking me, what is it when you communicate about the past, telling me how you use the money in the past? You are simply telling me to find alternative means. Because I have lost the money, I'm coming back. You cancelled the date. I was not able to pay. So what African countries should do, instead of asking for debt cancellation and the debt forgiveness, they should ask for abolition of debts. If the world became sincere, the entire North world that gained from us, that carried our diamonds, that carried our gold, that carried our salt, Timbuktu, via the Carthage, Tunis. You remember that capital city in Mali, the triangle trade, when goods were brought from Caribbean, passing through the desert of Sahara, going to Carthage, to Mediterranean Sea, up to Britain, up to Europe, up to Portugal, up to Spain, up to all countries. The Dutch built the dikes. Dikes are one of the biggest wonders of the world. They were able to push back. Up to today, the cement used down there, some of the cement came from Africa. The soil was mixed from Africa. That's why it has held for years, Miriam. Don't you think the dikes would have broken that cement and come for people to kill the Hague? I wish the water came to the Hague. I'm sorry. So that Hague office is no more. You know, the Hague office, we are on the water. We are only just seeing the ocean is up and we are down. But you can see the mercantile capitalism, what they did, Miriam, is to take this from us, to take our diamonds, to take our gold. When you remove, you get a pure ring, Miriam, like of this nature. You have a ring, they have removed a lot of particles. Do you know where those particles go? Do you know what they make them out of the particles? They crush them. These are some of the things that they mix in building the steel that you see, that holds, because gold holds longer, stronger than any other item underground in the soil. So African countries should develop a policy. And I'm telling those that can listen, those who don't undermine black professors and doctors and lecturers, and they prefer to be lectured to by white professors and lecturers. You find a student telling you, I wish Mr. Brown came. And yet Mr. Brown has the same material that Dr. Matsanga would have. He wouldn't like to listen to Mr. Brown. I don't know what we shall do, Miriam. This is a conversation. What shall we do to our mindsets? We go to borrow from these people. We go fly in these countries, begging them that we need money. Instead of telling them we have a loan, the loan that we have, cancel it. Don't cancel it. Abolish it. We start afresh. From today, we shall be very loyal. We shall not misuse this loan. But then coming back to my writing that I wrote this morning, which has tickled so many economists. Some people felt I don't know economics. I do. Only that I don't want to poke my nose into other people's subjects. What took Miriam? The question here is, how did we end up there? How did we end up there? We borrowed. Every African country went out to borrow. But what did you do with the borrowed money? Corruption brought us where we are with big debt crisis, because we misused some of this money on things that were not supposed to be done. Every African country has got this syndrome. Every African country has got this crisis. So the best thing is the African Union. For example, Midian, I am trying to vie for African Union chairperson, chairmanship. If I get it, if I don't get it, still I'll remain an African. But I want to say, for example, take an example. We have 54 countries. Why can't we, Miriam, create 54 branches of African Union Bank? In each country, let's have a branch of African Union Bank, where instead of people banking in Abuja, Barclays, tell Africans to bank in African Union Bank competitively. African Union chairperson has demanded not to be collecting only salaries, not to be banking salaries in Ethiopian bank, and then they come every week in dollars, and then you pay workers, and then that is the money. Miriam, that is the money that has been collected. It hasn't done any business. What about if African Union collected money, put it in banking institutions? How much money, how much profit would each bank and branch bring at the end of the month, which can come to the Central African Union Bank in Addis Ababa, controlled by the management of the finance committee systems that the governor of the central bank or the Central Bank of African Union will be able to manage the finances, then get down, have a budget, and say our bank has made profit of $20 billion. What are the priorities here? What are the priorities? This is some of the view, some of the manifesto that I want to bring to the African Union, so that each branch in Nairobi, where you are now, we could have an African Union Bank. Miriam, you would be very proud to walk into that bank as an African.
We do.
And bank your money.
We do have that bank.
And say, I'm banking this money because it is going to help somebody in Namibia. It is going to help somebody in Botswana. It is going to help somebody in Somalia. It will help somebody in Central African Republic. It will help somebody who is lacking shelter in South Sudan. When the management of the bank sits, you are banking the money. The managers use the money to trade, to give loans to people. And this money comes back with interest. And that interest in dollars accumulates. Africa would be dependent, not a dependent on the Western, on the North, the rich North. It will be independent, that it will work out, it can sponsor its elections. Miriam, you wonder, as I sit back and watch, as I talk to you and watch and listen to your views and the other views of other people. Miriam, at times, life is very, very sad for us in Africa. A country goes to borrow money for elections. Surely, you borrow money for elections. Your GDP is $1 billion. Your GDP, and you are borrowing 5 billion or 2 billion or 1.5 billion. How will you pay back? How will you pay back? And that's why you see smaller countries, European Union, that has developed its democracy for a long time, comes in to tell us, oh, it is sad, but for you, and unfortunately, you will have to get our money on our conditions. And we shall lend you money for your elections. But we shall come there to supervise your elections. One of the problems that African countries are facing are coming from elections across the whole board. There is no country in Africa that holds the elections that goes without a friendly country saying this was not fair, this was not free and fair, this was not transparent, because you have borrowed their money. Because you have borrowed their money. So imagine we had a branches in 54 countries. How much if each branch in 54 countries can bring $2 million a year? Miriam, $2 million. Give it the lowest. $2 million. Net, $2 million. Where the branches can multiply like in Egypt. You can create as many branches as you want. But the main branch is one that is accountable by African Union. We could be selling sovereign bonds to earn money. If a bank is there, African Union can sell sovereign bonds, floated sovereign bonds. That will give them money to be able to finance their own projects. This is the type of thinking that people, economists, should be thinking and advising their government. Not only to rely on the collection of revenue authorities, customs, and people are waiting for you at the airport. They want you to open your perfumes. There, you have bought only 6 perfumes for your wife, your children, your house girl, your shamba boy, and somebody says, no, you should only buy, Miriam, you know what? You should buy only 2 perfumes. My friend, that is infringing on the rights of the man who has trouble. He has a family, extended family in Africa. And you give a limit to only 2 perfumes. What is it then? Why did you put it there as a duty free? There is a better way of collecting taxation. Other ways of collecting taxation. A bank of this nature of African Union would give us soft loans, loans without higher interest that will not defeat the member state to pay. So that our manifesto, my manifesto therefore, as a voice of Africa, that we shall bring in the future during the elections on 2024 for the chairperson of African Union, is that type of banking that I want a bank, a branch in every African country, a branch of African Union Bank. I am very much aware of the consequences that when Gaddafi talked about an African bank, he got bullets. His country was dismembered. We died. He died. We lost the guy. Now, are we going to sit and mourn, lament every day? Remember, when you compare the sit and lament, oh, I borrowed, oh, I borrowed, oh, I borrowed. So when IMF reminds you, oh, you can't cancel this debt. You can't cancel this debt because you misused it. Let Africa go for one typical move. One typical move. Abolition of debt crisis or debts. Let the debts be abolished. Let's be honest to our northern part rich countries that we cannot afford. Medium, we cannot afford. And as we speak right now, there is no African country that can afford to pay. Tuambiane ukweli. Let's talk the truth. Let's not go around and we create chaos for nothing. There is no African country that can afford to pay if the same structures, and I told you this week I will be writing about the structures that have hindered Africa from developing. African developing countries must always start by asking the right things. Cancellation is not a solution. Abolition is a solution. If people cancel the slave trade and postponed it for a further day, would it be there today, media? Would it would be there? Someone would go and buy Africans. It has now come in a different way. We take ourselves, you see, if we take ourselves to Saudi Arabia, we take ourselves to Qatar, we take ourselves to United Arab Emirates, we take ourselves to Kuwait, and then we cry in the morning. We are being beaten. These guys beat us, look at us as monsters. They don't look at us as brothers. It is very sad. Therefore, to say Africa should only stick on vote of cancellation, change the terminology. I want to ask African presidents to change the terminology. Instead of cancellation, ask for abolition. Abolish debts. We helped you to build the railways. We helped you to build the dikes. Those dikes, the 7 wonders of the world. The dikes are 7 wonders of the world. How the Dutch were able. They stole our diamonds. They stole the gold from South Africa and they took it to build the dikes. How could they have got the steel to be able to build the steel? And up to today, these dikes, no water can leak. Medium. Have you ever found out something like that? When you go to North Holland, God willing, you to go and enjoy your studies, further studies. There are good universities there. They will take you for a tour of Rotterdam, where the dikes are, and it is a wonder. And when you stand like this, you ask, why this cement with this big ocean of Atlantic, the North Atlantic Ocean hitting it every day, why doesn't it break? Why? Those are the questions. Can't we stand firm and tell our brothers in the North that we can't pay? We can't pay. I don't see African, don't add trouble. We can't pay. Abolish the past loans. Tell China we can't pay. Look for a way of abolishing. When we are right in a good position, we can pay you. But for now, don't really just structuring the debt is not a solution to the debt crisis. I am stating here, structuring a debt is not a solution to the debt crisis. It increases more problems when we still have the same structure that made us to go and borrow. Miriam, back to you if you have something to ask or to contribute.
Yeah, thank you so much. I don't know if you can hear me.
I hear you, Miriam.
Okay. So actually, African Union does have its, we do have a bank here, the African Development Bank, AFDB. That is a multilateral development finance institution that is headquartered in Abidjan in Ivory Coast. Since September 2014, it was founded in 1964 by the Organization of African Unity, which is the predecessor of the African Union. But we do have other stakeholders, shareholders, and the largest shareholder in the AFD, the bank, is the United Kingdom with approximately 14% of the total working shares, followed by United States at 6.5% of the total voting shares, and then Japan with 5.4%, and the Federal Reserve Bank of New York was designated as the depositor bank of the fund according to Telegraph Sense. So we do have our own bank here, the African Development Bank, but we have its monies being deposited. The depositor bank is in New York, which is ridiculous to even think about that. And the ADF lends at no interest rate, with an annual service charge of 0.75%, a commitment fee of 0.5%, and a 50-year repayment period, including a 10-year grace period. The 10th United Kingdom replenished of the ADF was in 2006. So we actually do have this bank here, which, Doc, everything that you've mentioned that we're supposed to be getting from an African bank, there it is outlined. I was just doing my research. It is outlined there, but unfortunately, because of these other external factors and external shareholders that we have, like the UK, US, Japan, and these other countries, so it's not truly our bank, but it's actually owned by the African Union, and it was started by OAU. So our forefathers already had that foresight and what you are talking about, Doc. So they already had that foresight, and they thought, for us to be truly free, then we must have a banking institution, a financial institution, which will be able to help Africa to address its financial issues. But I guess because of funding, challenges, now we don't fully own our bank. We have other stakeholders, and even our deposit account is in New York. That is already problematic there. So that tells you it's our bank, but not really. And should the debt be...
Miriam, just hold it there. My sister, we don't have any bank. Please, just cancel it. There is no bank there. You have now just read the structure of African Development Bank. And I see African people just laughing around, going around that they are going for African Development Bank meeting. It is always in the AU. It is not our bank. That is not the type of bank I'm looking for. That is not the type of economics that I'm looking for. When I become the AU chairperson, my type of economics will be each African bank, each African nation called Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania will have AU Bank, African Union Bank, AUB, written African Union Bank. I am not interested in the rubbish of African Development Bank. The money that we borrow from African Development Bank is the same money that has enslaved us, that was used. You can see Britain has come in there. It has bought shares. This bank is not even on Africa. It banks in Citibank in the United States of America. What did you read there? Read it for the viewers to know.
Okay. So it's the Federal Reserve Bank of New York was designated as the depositor bank for the fund. Every money that comes in, according to telegraphs that were sent from the U.S. Embassy in Abidjan in 1976. Yes, so Federal Reserve Bank of New York, that is where we bank the money for the funds for the African Development Bank, but it's for the African Union.
The Federal Bank of the United States of America.
The Federal Reserve Bank of New York.
Reserve Bank, not African Reserve Bank. That's not our bank. And let Africans hear me properly. We are not, I am not, I can stand alone, I don't mind. After all, I've been hated on so many things in Africa, but what I talked, I've come to haunt. Some of the things that I told people are haunting you people in Africa. Oh, you can go to hell. Go to hell! They are haunting you. I told you. And I'm now telling you again. Miriam, let's be honest. I'm telling you, that is not our bank. You can't have a bank which is with banking with Reserve Bank of America. What bank is that? Why don't we have a bank that is banking with Kenya Reserve, Kenya Commercial Bank? No, Tunisian Bank or Cairo. It is a headquarters in Addis Ababa Reserve Bank. We keep our own dollars. That's what China does. China keeps its own dollars. But here we have been infiltrated in African Development Bank by the same countries that took our wealth. They came back to say we shall buy shares in this bank, and the bank doesn't function. It gives loans. Oh, okay. If you are saying we have African what? Development Bank, why does Congo borrow money for elections? Why does Congo go to European Union? If African Development Bank has the money, why can't African Development Bank lend the Democratic Republic of Congo money to go and conduct its elections? Then you see Congo appealing to the European Union for them to be given some money to hold an election. I'm asking. I'm now a very stupid African seated home. Well, Mabutu is still my president. Yet Mabutu went to see God long time ago. Unaona? Tuko na shida. You tell Africans to do a redemption strategy. They ask you, what is the redemption strategy? Have you seen now? Everywhere in Africa, people want, you need it. You have to do a redemption strategy. Professor Matanga said, you need a redemption strategy. You can walk up to Genjo Gabriel. If you don't do a redemption strategy, you will come to my hands. Hello? Pana kutisha watu. Hello? Africa, do a redemption strategy. Walaya Mungu. If you don't do a redemption strategy on the continent of Africa, all of us, we are perishing. Whether Uganda, we did ours. Whether South Sudan, Miriam, South Sudan, you have been crying. Chad, they need a redemption strategy. You have seen rebels. Qatar is airlifting rebels from South Sudan, South Libya to Doha to sit down to do a redemption strategy. Somalia, you need a redemption strategy. There is a fight, a war, a bad war, worse than Al-Shabaab, that is taking place inside Somalia today. You need a redemption strategy. Zimbabwe, you need need a redemption strategy. South Africa, you need a redemption strategy. You need to sit down and look at what past, what present, what next. If you don't do that, this debt crisis will hang on us. You can call me names, but I tell you, what I said has come to pass. There are people who don't want to admit because they think they will give me a credit. But you will soon give me the credit. You will soon give me a credit. You will soon give me a credit. Watch it. You need it. In Congo, we need a redemption strategy. If the West Congolese cannot meet the East Congolese, the Banamulenge cannot travel to Kinshasa because they have long nose and tall legs. The Biafrans cannot go to Kano, Onitsha. From Onitsha cannot travel to Katsina, Kano, Maiduguri areas, Ambra state, all those states, because they are Biafran, they are Igbo. You need a redemption strategy. Africa. The Amazonians cannot come to Yaoundé because they speak English. The people in Yaoundé speak French. How on earth, Africans, how stupid are you? The Voice of Africa is talking today. How stupid are you, Miriam, that someone divides you on a language? That you people from Amazonia, you speak English, therefore don't come back down to Yaoundé, which speaks French. Hello? Hello? A redemption strategy is needed to get a debt abolition. A redemption strategy is needed to unite an Africa. A redemption strategy is needed to bring in a bank that is not funded again by European Union, where your reserves are kept by man. What did you read again? My sister Miriam, what did you read? You say the reserves are kept by Reserve Bank of America.
Of New York.
It is the American Reserve Bank making the money, the kill, the interest that would develop. Then the same America comes out and says, I am giving you some loan to build a road, but I don't want China to come near that road. Have you seen how we have been manipulated? Using the same money that we took their Miriam to bank. After collecting our money, we pay back the interest to the African, we pay back without interest to the African Development Bank. Have you ever asked why we don't pay back with interest? Which bank is this? Hello? There's a reason here. Which bank is this that you pay without interest? It means the bank is getting somebody on top of African Development Bank. That's why the job becomes very competitive. You know that? They can kill you. You try to apply for that post, they can kill you. The African countries divide each other on this African Development Bank leadership. Formerly, this man from Nigeria who was to take, you saw how the blood was on the floor. Who should lead the bank, yes or no? Whose headquarters are in Tunisia? And then whose money is bank in in the Reserve Bank of America? Who gets the interest medium? It is the bank in America, not you. So my policy and the policy of our new vision of African Union is to get a bank, Miriam, that is an African Union bank, not African Development Bank. It has lost its usefulness because it doesn't develop Africa in the way we want. We need a bank where Africans themselves will bank shillings in Nairobi. You go there and put your shillings, you ask them tomorrow, you want a loan, they will pay you. It will be doing several jobs. As it pays you, you pay back the loan. You are building another African country that wants a railway, that wants a road, that wants an airport, that wants medicine, that wants schools. There will be money available in the AU headquarters, such that AU is never dominated, captured by the Western powers. I rest my case now. You see what I'm talking about? Why they have brought in the African Development Bank is to keep us off, Miriam. Is to keep us off from organizing our own bank. But if we had our own bank with headquarters in African Union in Addis Ababa, and all the 54 branches, at the end of the month, all the 54 managers, general managers of each country arrive in Addis Ababa to tell us the status of economics of our African countries. Come on. Come on. You are just fighting over things which are asking people. It is painful, Miriam. Ask people. Look at this. You are fighting over things you don't want to do. A crisis. You want to create a crisis when you can't do a redemption. To get a debt crisis out of Africa, you need to redempt the financial institutions. You must do a redemption strategy, structuring of the financial institutions that have been siphoning our money out of Africa. And I swear, if you don't do a redemption strategy, whichever way, either economics, politics, social, you are dead. Kisha, we are finished. Let's look at each other, Miriam, and say, you, my sister, you have just read something that is striking my heart. A bank is Africa, the name Africa Development Bank.
Yeah.
And the reserve. This is going to work in my body today. Reserves are kept. Sure. And all these powerful heads of state of Africa, all these educated, powerful men in Africa, they all don't see this. We are kept there, that we have, you see everybody saying, we are attending a seminar for Africa Development Bank. What rubbish? And Africa, it is not developing you. It is developing United States of America, where they bank the money. We get our money and the bank are there.
But Doc, which it could be a great idea, but when you look at the way you're asking our leaders, can they not see how problematic this is? Just the other day when Kamala Harris, the Vice President of the U.S., was visiting Ghana, and they had this press conference with Ghana's President Nana Akufo-Addo, and one of the key things that Kamala Harris said, and I think I was baffled, I was really, really baffled, and I talked about it here yesterday in one of the shows, is that the U.S. Treasury Department will bring its official to Ghana to help the Ghanaian government in its debt management. And I thought, all these learned people in Ghana, and Ghana being that lighthouse, one of those countries that is fairly respected in the continent, does not have a single person who could actually help the government with advice or things, to do with financial status of the country or debt management. They have to wait for the US to bring an official from the State Department, and I thought this is quite interesting. This has nothing to do with the debt management in Ghana. If you let these very sensitive sectors in your country to be infiltrated by external factors, then that is a problem. And I found that to be very astounding. So that is also there. So maybe when you look at such an example, we still have a long way to go for our leaders to even think of an importance of having our own African-owned bank that we run based on our own terms and conditions. I think we still have a long way to go to even think about that or achieve that.
Let me tell you, Miriam, why do they bring a member of the United States to be part and parcel of the restructuring program? They assume they are captives. Why would, let me ask you, if I have my $10 million in my house, why would you capture me? I would tell you no. Let me restructure my 10 million and go out and trade the way I want to trade. Give me, if you want your money, I will pay you after 5 years. Don't come near me. But now the way Ghana is doing it, they will even bog them down into paperwork. That paperwork is also taking money. All African leaders don't see this. When you want to advise them, they kill you. They want to kill you. Actually, they can kill you. Did you know that? You go and tell an African leader that what is African Development Bank? Then at night he will send people to come for you. That man knows a lot. Miriam, I'm telling you. That man knows a lot. What does he know? That guy can know a lot of our things. That's why you have seen strife all over Africa. Everywhere in Africa, South Africa, you look at the strife, the political strife, the chaos, the center cannot hold anymore because there is lack of a redemption strategy. The center cannot hold anymore, media. The center is gone. If you don't come back and look at the center point, where did we go wrong? We went wrong by borrowing. I want to ask you, can you get the money? Zimbabwe got the money, Miriam. It got all the money that they owe to IMF. They called the IMF and Mnangagwa says, I want to pay your money and don't ever come to my place. Can I tell you what happened? IMF said, no, we don't want the money. We want you to restructure how you will pay it back. Then the Zimbabwe people said, what do you mean that you want to restructure? We want to clear your debt so that you don't want demand anything from us. But because the IMF is a personal property of individuals, if you read my essay, my article this morning, which I wrote with my eyes open, I say I want to support my hardline stance against any African who goes to Europe to beg for money or to America to beg for money. We must know that during the so-called period of structural adjustment throughout the 1980s and 1990s, the global south, which is we, including Uganda, Tanzania, and Nigeria, all of us, we transferred equivalent of 56 Marshall plans. You know what the Marshall Plan was in Europe? We transferred it to the north in the form of debt service. We took the debt service, the money collected, has served Europe, has developed the waterways, the roads you see in Stockholm, in Norway, in Amsterdam. Go and see those roads. They built the roads from our stupidity. Then later on you see. They are private. It is completely crazy, Miriam. Against African economists or leaders who utter the word dirty forgiveness. I'm really crazy. I'm crazy about this type of guys, that dirty forgiveness. We only ask for forgiveness from God, who has, from God, not from those who have exploited us during colonialism. It must be known that at least 40%, and many of get this very clear, 40%, sorry, of 40% of the African external debt is held by private. Can I shock you again? 40% of this money we have borrowed, Miriam, is held by private creditors. What did I tell you? For you are saying we are paying IMF. You are not paying IMF. You might be paying Matanga as a ghost, as a private creditor who lent you the money. IMF has no money of its own. Have you asked where IMF is in America and it is not anywhere else? Why is IMF in America and not in London? Because a few private creditors, silent creditors like Bill Gates, Amazon, all these guys of Twitter, Facebook, all these billionaires, they are the owners of IMF. So any debt, external debt that you pay back, you service, it goes to these guys. You are enlarging. Then tomorrow they say the richest guys in the world, they are the ones that are listed on the money that has been collected from us, Africa. Yet we have cocoa, we have diamonds, we have gold, we have oil, we have animals that produce the best milk than the milk that is there, because our milk is natural. The animals eat the natural grass that comes out of our soils. And unfortunately, we are spoiling it with so many bad soils and the fertilizers that are being brought in our continent. Miriam, in a nutshell, brothers and sisters, Miriam, if we don't change our modus operandi, we are doomed to fail. If you have some other word, before I make a takeaway, you add there whatever might have missed a bit there.
No. I don't have anything else to add to that. You can just have the takeaway.
Okay. Let me do a takeaway. Many African countries are asking for debt forgiveness, debt relief, cancellation. Cancellation, relief, structuring will not bring us any new dawn of hope. It will only add to the problems that we have. Because we still have the same disease that made us to go and borrow. What is the disease? Where did we go wrong? How did we get to where we are today? Those are some of the things that we must first, as Africans and African countries, learn how we can fight them, prevent them from occurring, so that we cannot again land in the crisis or in the debt crisis that we are in today. But given that One wonders why Africa would like to ask for forgiveness, yet the rich North took all our mineral raw materials from our forefathers, took them to the rich North, developed the rich North. All the subways, the trains, the underground, the airports, the dikes that you see in Europe, the good roads that you see, the ships that you see, came as a result of several years of trading in mercantile capitalism that was involved in taking our raw materials, supplying them back to us at a higher price. It's indeed time for Africa to ask for abolition, complete abolition of debt, instead of asking for forgiveness. Because forgiveness will lead us to begging. Africa cannot beg when we have our own resources that we can utilize, step on, and stand on, and make a push for a better bargain on the world stage economically. But because of the difficulties of our setups of politics, social, and economic structures that we have on the continent of Africa, that we have lost it. We have left it for the Europeans, the Americans, the Chinese to come to manipulate us on this continent. They lend us the money, yet we are the people who gave them the money to build that money. It's indeed time for us, therefore, to say, why don't you abolish and we start afresh? It's indeed time for African leaders to stand up and tell the world that we cannot afford, we can't pay. Because we were brothers, you took our minerals, you still take our minerals, you still take our raw materials, you still come with conflicts, you give us conflicts. As we fight, you are taking the raw materials. It's indeed time to abolish. You give us elections that always keep us fighting on the streets and everywhere in Africa across, bargaining, taking 5 years of hard work, waste more economic hours on the fighting more than economic hours of working. It's indeed time for us to rethink as Africans that we need a redemption strategy, and an economic redemption strategy that will remove debt crisis in Africa. Our city continues and is continuing to bulge. It's a big city. It gives us sleepless nights. What can we do as Africans? Let's think afresh. Let's ask for abolition of debt crisis, of debts. Let's not ask for cancellation, because cancellation, when you return to borrow, they will ask you, because the private creditors are the ones that demand the funding that you borrowed and that you took out of IMF or World Bank. I rest my case. Thank you.
Rivers do not drink their own water. Trees do not eat their own fruit. The sun does not shine on itself, and flowers do not spread their fragrance for themselves. Living for others is a rule of nature. We are all born to help each other. No matter how difficult it is, life is good when you are happy, but much better when others are happy because